So because the voice is so beautiful, I'm going to end my sermon a little bit shorter, make my sermon a little bit shorter so they can come up again to sing. Right? So name is Christ. I want to share with you this morning Daniel's purpose in his heart. Let's turn about Daniel chapter 1 verse 8. Daniel chapter 1 verse 8. But Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with a portion of the king's delicacies, nor with the wine which he drank. Therefore he requested of the chief of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself. We know about Daniel. Daniel, he is a man of prayer. But even though at a young age, Daniel was able to focus his life always to God. So that's why so many of you, right, these last 5 days, you have studied so much and prayed so much. But what is all this about? That all of you also can make determination inside your heart to do God's will. Just like for Daniel, right? Daniel, he purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with a portion of king's delicacy. No, last night a lot of you got your cell phone back, right? Did you go on social media? Or you purpose inside your heart that you will not go on social media? Why you and I are so special among all the people in the world? Because you and I are God's children. You and I are royal priesthood. You and I are God's special people. Look at Daniel. If you look at, when you and I go back home, the first thing that Satan wants to do, right, is for you to defile yourself. So even right now, where you want to hold on and make that determination, purpose in your heart that, I'm not going to sin against my God. Because the first thing that Satan wants to do, just like in Daniel, right? God gave Jerusalem to Babylon. How can that be? How come God gave Jerusalem to Babylon? Let's read verse 1. Verse 1. In the third year of the reign of King Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. Verse 2. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand, with some of the articles of the house of God, which he carried into the land of Shinar to the house of his God. And he brought the article into the treasure house of his God. So during this time, God gave Judah into the hand of King Nebuchadnezzar, to the people of Babylon. Why was that? Because they sinned against God greatly. And that's why Daniel, even though he was carried away into the land of Babylon, but he made a great determination. And the first thing the king of Babylon did is what? He besieged the city of Jerusalem. What does Jerusalem mean? Jerusalem means this, the city of peace. Right? The city of peace. So right now, every single one of you, right? The first prayer we had during SIC, a lot of you have a lot of burden, right? You make faces, right? And some of you cry, not tears of joy, but you cry because of burden. But after 5 days later, God have lifted the sorrow, your burden. And a lot of you, when you pray, your faces look just like angels. And you also shed tears, but this time your tears are tears of joy. But guess what? When you and I go back home, Satan also want to besiege the city of Jerusalem. Right? He also want to besiege that peace that you have inside your heart. Because even though all of you are very young, but you also know that you also feel the deep void inside your heart, right? You feel sad, you feel lonely. Sometimes you feel so burdened. Of course, human being, we all feel like this. But remember, God is with us. Even though during that time, God gave Judah to King Nebuchadnezzar. But Daniel, he purposed in his heart You know what? Even though he besieged the city of peace, but in my heart, I will continue to have peace because God is with me. Just like for all of us. The way you feel right now, for these last 5 days, you also can feel at home. That peace, that joy, that kind of love that you feel from our Lord Jesus Christ. But you must make determination inside your heart. And we look at Daniel, right? We know that Daniel always prayed at least 3 times a day. But Daniel, he's a very special person. Let's read verse 3. Verse 3. Then the king instructed Apenas, the master of his eunuchs, to bring some of the children of Israel and some of the kings of descendants and some of the nobles. Actually, Daniel, he's not an ordinary person. He's not an ordinary person. Yes, he's from the tribe of Israel. But he also comes from the descendant of kings and nobles. You and I also, just like Daniel. We are the spiritual Israelites. We also come from descendant of kings and noble. Why? Because our Lord Jesus Christ, he is the king and he is our father. And because of this, Satan, he wants to take every single one of us under his control. He wants to take us so you and I can serve him, just like Daniel and his 3 friends. And if we look at Daniel after he was captured, what did the king want to do to them, right? The king of Babylon taught Daniel the Babylonian culture. These last 5 days, you learn about God's culture, right? You learn about God's language, that is in prayer. And you learn about God's literature, that is in reading the scriptures. But Satan doesn't want us to learn all these things, actually. When you and I go back home, he doesn't want us to read the scriptures. He does not want us to pray. He will continue to do this until you and I die. That's why Daniel had the purpose inside his heart. Look what the Babylonian kings want to do to Daniel and his friends. Verse 4. Young men in whom there was no blemish, but good looking, gifted in all wisdom, possessing knowledge, and quick to understand, who had ability to serve in the king's palace, and whom they might teach the language and literature of the Chaldeans. So here, right, Daniel is so special. Not only come from nobility, but also he has no blemish, right? His face was perfect. He was a very handsome and good-looking boy, right? You and I also the same thing. Before baptism, all of us, we have a lot of blemishes, right? But after baptism, all of us in the eye of the Lord are very beautiful, are very handsome, very good-looking. But Satan, that's why he wants us to become ugly again, right? Not only that, we see Daniel, he's also gifted in all wisdom. You know, during my classes, I ask a lot of you many questions, but praise and thank God, because the Spirit of God is inside of you. When you answer with such great wisdom. That's what Satan doesn't like. Because the more wisdom you have about God, the more you know that you need to hold on to our Lord Jesus Christ, and Satan doesn't like that. That's why all of us also are gifted in wisdom, and we also possess knowledge, and we're also quick to understand. All these qualities that you and I can use to serve our Lord Jesus Christ. But Satan also wants you and I to serve him with all these abilities. And what they do, the first thing they do, here, they say, and whom they might teach the language and literature. Language and literature. Of course, when you and I understand a language is to converse with one another. Because during a time, maybe you only speak Hebrews, but they don't want them to continue to speak Hebrews. They want them to speak Chaldean language, just like for us. Right now, these last 5 days, we have learned the language of God with prayer. Right? We pray a couple hours a day. But now when we go back home, Satan he wants us to forget all those. He wants us to learn his language. On what language is that? Maybe cursing, lying, right? Swearing, right? All those things. That's why you and I must also make determination inside our heart not to do any of these things. Because the minute you and I forget the language of God, then the other language is the language of Satan. So make determination. When I go home, I'm not going to lie anymore. When I go home, I'm not going to curse anymore. When I go home, I want to read, I want to pray. Because this is the language I've been taught. Of course, sometime, when I remember when I first came to this country, right? And my family is one of the first Asian family in that neighborhood. And during the time, I didn't speak English. And I really, really want to learn English because I couldn't understand what people are saying around me. Not only that, when I speak Cambodian, people thought I was very strange because they never heard of Cambodian before. So during that time, I really don't want to speak Cambodian at all. So everywhere I go, even I don't understand anything, I just keep my mouth shut, right? I didn't want to try to explain myself or nothing. Why? Because the minute I try to explain myself, people know, oh, you don't speak English, right? And I would feel very bad. I would feel very bad. But maybe some of us also feel like this. When we pray in front of people, and our language that we pray to God is very foreign to others, right? Maybe they don't understand what we're saying. Sometimes we feel embarrassed, this and that, but don't worry about those kind of stuff. The most important thing is that you and I can please God. Because when you and I make determination, when we purpose inside our heart, not to please men, but to please God. So for these last 5 days, we have learned the language of God. Let's continue to speak the language of God, and not the Chaldeans, and not the things of this world. And the second thing, of course, literature, right? Literature. Why people write literature? Most of the time to tell people where they come from, what they're doing here, where they're going to go, right? Quite often, literature talks about history of mankind, of humankind. But of course, this is the Chaldean literature. It's about the Chaldeans' culture. What they do, what kind of God they worship, all of these things. That's what Satan wants you to learn. But for us, we know that our literature is the Bible. That's what we've been doing, right? We study so many Bible verses. Even just now when you sang, right? The 5 verses. And they're quite long, and you remember all of it. We always remember this. Don't forget when you and I go home. Right? Because our literature is the Bible. Why? Because the Bible tells us where we come from. What are we doing here? Where are we going to go? And the God that you and I should worship. But if we learn about the God in this world, then first we are confused where we come from. Also, we do not know what we're doing here. And then we die, we have no idea where we're going to go. Why? Because what we study about is the gods of the Chaldeans, the God of this world that people worship. That is Satan. So don't forget that. Always remember the language has been taught to us by Lord Jesus Christ. That is praying in the Holy Spirit. And that is reading the scriptures. And not only that, and also King of Babylon also want to change Daniel and his friend's name. Right? And we can see in verse 6. Now from among those of the son of Judah were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Verse 7. To them the chief of the eunuchs gave them names. He gave Daniel the name of Belteshazzar, to Hananiah Shadrach, to Mishael Meshach, and to Azariah Abednego. Why did the king of Babylon want to change the name? Actually, to change the identity. When I first came to this country, I did not like to be Cambodian, right? Because Cambodian, when we talk about Cambodian, people say Cambodian are very ghetto, right? So I didn't want to be associated with Cambodian. So my name, Vuthy, right? I didn't want to be Vuthy, right? So first I changed my name to Tom, right? The people just call me Tom, right? And after I was like, oh, Tom, I don't like Tom too much. So then I tell them to call me William, right? So Will, right? Call me Will. And after a while, I didn't like Will too much, right? Then during that time, I was becoming a citizen. I was saying to myself, should I really change my name, right? Legally change my name. And I thought about it, saying, Vuthy is a good name, right? Because Vuthy actually brings me a lot of good memories, right? From Cambodia, a journey here to America, and things like that. So when I became a citizen, I didn't change my name. But now, if you go to the restaurant, Salt Lake Station, if you look for Vuthy, nobody knows who Vuthy is. But you look for Frankie, That's me, I'm Frankie. Now I'm Frankie. So now, like when I'm on Craigslist and stuff like that, so everybody know me as Frankie, right? So now I'm Frankie, right? Because I took my father's name. My adopted father's name was Frank, right? So when he passed away, and then I'm little Frankie, right? So now my name is Frankie. And, but the thing is, sometimes we don't like who we are, right? Especially, our identity. Maybe for all of you too, you feel, when you go to school, right? Maybe the way you are, you don't like it, right? You're not as cool as other kids, right? You're not as popular as other kids. So you want to change who you are. But actually, you should not. Because who we are is so special in the eyes of the Lord, right? We are God-chosen people. We are the spiritual Israelite. This is how wonderful this is, right? But quite often when we go out in the world, of course, we want to change who we are, what we are. And that's why God keep reminding the Israelite. Say, "O Israel, the Lord God is the only one." What does that mean? Because during that time, God chosen people, only the Israelite. And if they know who they are, right, as the Israelite, then they know the God they should worship. Because, the Philistine, they worship their own God. They have their own God because they are Philistine. But for us, if we are spiritual Israelites, we also have a God that you and I worship. And that's why God always reminds Israel, look, "O Israel, you are the Israelite, and the God that you worship is the true and living God, not any idols." Always remember that. Love who we are and what we are, because you and I belong to our Lord Jesus Christ. And even now, I really embrace my culture and who I am, right? Who I am. Even though I'm mixed, right? I'm Cambodian, have some Vietnamese and Korean and a little French, right? But I always say I'm Cambodian. That's why the other time a brother asked me, "Hey, why you always say you're Cambodian?" Because I'm proud to be Cambodian. I really am, but it took me a long time, right? To be proud of who I am. But I hope that every single one of you also proud of who we are as the chosen people of God. Don't let other people change our names, right? And of course, all the names that King Nebuchadnezzar changed to, they all belong to his gods, right? His culture. And not only that, King of Babylon also gave them his delicacy. Okay? Let's go to verse 5. "And the king appointed for them a daily provision of the king delicacy and of the wine which he drank, and 3 years of training for them, so that at the end of that time they might serve before the king." Verse 6. "Now from among those of the son of Judah were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah." So here, right, remember, they were under captivity, right? There was a great famine in the land. So the Israelites have nothing to eat, no water to drink. But for Daniel and his 3 friends, the king not only gave them food to eat, but he gave him his delicacy. They mean the best of the best, right? The best food. Why did he entice them with such great food? Because in the end, he wanted them to serve him. So the same thing, right? For all of us. Satan also wanted to give us his delicacy. But why Daniel did not want to eat the king's delicacy? Because most likely the king offered that food or the drink already to his God, to his idol. And Daniel did not want to defile himself. So the same thing for us. We must be very careful. Of course, there's nothing wrong to enjoy life, eat, drink, and do a lot of things like that. But you and I must be very careful. Where this food come from? Where this drinking come from? Is it from Satan? Is it from God? So with this delicacy, right, sometimes will cause us to sin greatly against God. But you and I must make determination, right? And sometimes, of course, when we talk about food and drink, it's not only with the physical food and drink. Maybe some of you just live your life to play video games, right? Live your life to go on social media. All these things, maybe it's a delicacy from Satan to us. We enjoy it so much, right? When you and I kneel down and pray for half an hour, it seems forever. But when we, in front of video games and play for an hour, it seems only a couple of minutes. There's something wrong with that, right? Why? Because when Satan gives us the delicacy that you and I enjoy most, right? Of course, in each one of us, our delicacy are very different, right? Some of us like to go on social media. Some like to play video games. Some of us like to do other things. But Satan knows what kind of food you and I like, and what kind of food we enjoy the most. And he will offer that to us. But if you and I take it without being cautious, just like Daniel, then we might sin greatly against God. But Daniel not only purpose, right, only in his heart, but Daniel also put into action. This is the most important thing, right? You and I can make determination, but we don't put in action, then we'll stay the same. For the last 5 years, I've been telling my wife, you know what, I'm going to get a six-pack. Right, for the last 5 years, and nothing happened. Right? Actually, things happen. My stomach's getting bigger. Right? Why? Because even though I make this determination, I make this purpose, but I don't have time to do it. Right? I don't have time to do it. So the same thing for us. When we have a purpose, a motivation inside our heart, is to fulfill it, we must put into action, just like Daniel. Look at verse 9. Now God had brought Daniel into the favor of goodwill of the chief of eunuchs. And the chief eunuch said to Daniel, I fear my lord the king, who has appointed your food and drink. For why should I see your face looking worse than the young men who are your age? Then you would endanger my head before the king. Think about this, right? For Daniel to ask the chief of eunuchs, listen, you know what? We're not going to eat the king delicacy. First, right, the eunuch should be very upset with him, right? Say, why? What's wrong with the king delicacy, right? Why don't you want to eat it? And he say, what? I don't want to defile myself. What does that mean, you don't want to defile yourself? You say the food, the king's food is not good? And you say the king's food is evil, right? But actually the chief of eunuchs did not say any of those things. Why? Because here, God had brought Daniel into the favor and goodwill of the chief of eunuch. So when you and I make determination to fulfill God's will, God will move the heart of the people around us to fulfill what you and I want. But you and I must have faith, right? Sometimes we are so scared, right? Sometimes we eat lunch with our friends and we don't want to pray. Why? Because we feel embarrassed, right? But if you and I make determination, you know what? No matter where I am, I'm going to pray and say grace and give God the glory. And sometimes we just say grace and then our friends will talk to, wow, thank God, right? Thank God that you can say grace before you eat. And then sometimes you feel, oh, I should say grace too, right? That's God's grace, right? So that's why don't be scared. But you and I must have faith. If the eunuch did not have favor or find Daniel in favor and goodwill, he can just kill Daniel just like that, right? All right, fine. You don't want to eat? And you don't want to drink the king's delicacy? You know what? Go ahead, I'm going to take you and execute you. But Daniel wasn't afraid. Why? Because he realized what he did was according to God's will. So when he said, look, but and also the eunuchs, they say, look, I'm afraid, right? What happened after several days, and your face and the way you look is worse than the other one, and then you know what? My head will be on the king's platter. And then Daniel said, okay, no, if that is the case, you know what? Look at verse 11. So Daniel said to the steward, whom the chief of the eunuch had set over Daniel, right? Verse 12, please test your servant for 10 days, and let them give us vegetable to eat and water to drink. So wonderful, right? Daniel is so full of wisdom. You know what? I understand what you're going through, right? I also care about your life too. But you know what? Just test us. Just test us for that 10 days, right? And if it look worse, and then you know what? You do whatever you please. And then look at verse 13. He said, then let our appearance be examined before you, and the appearance of the young men who eat the portion of the king's delicacy. And as you see fit, so deal with your servant. So he consented with them in this matter and tested them 10 days. So what happened during that time? When they tested them, they looked much better than all other people who eat king's delicacy. So remember this, right? When you and I make determination, put into action. When you and I put to action, God will be with us. I mean, how can you drink only water and eat vegetable? You can be more healthier than the rest eating king delicacy. It's impossible, but not with God. Right? Not with God. So that's why for you and I, don't be afraid to make determination. Whatever you and I feel that we want to do for God, that's what you and I will do. But you and I need to have faith. I need to have faith. And don't worry too much. And at the end, remember when the eunuchs brought Daniel and his friends in front of the king, and they tested them, right? And the Bible said, Daniel and his friends, they are 10 times wiser than anyone in the land of Babylon. How can that be? They're only in their teens. Because God was with them. God is with them. So for you and I, don't be afraid to make the kind of determination, right? Now we're going back home. You know what? I'm going to put my video games aside. I'm going to put my social media aside. Because I want to pray more to our Lord Jesus Christ. I want to read more scriptures. And put that kind of determination into action. May the Lord help us. Before we come up and pray together once again, we would like to invite the SSC students to come and sing praises to the Lord.